Every now and then, we here at the Andrew Klavan Show like to try to reach across the aisle, create a little bit of understanding and compassion between conservatives and the gibbering idiots on the other side. After all, it does no good for us on the right to discuss our dedication to constitutional rule of law, limited government, and individual liberty if we can't even take a moment to listen to our friends on the left and try to understand all that largely meaningless screeching and whining they do while we're working for a living and raising our children. So today, in that spirit of bright goodwill, I'd like to examine the Democrat side of this election and try to understand what it is they're trying to say. Democrats believe that Donald Trump is a hate-mongering racist and bigot. And when Donald Trump calls Hillary a hate-mongering racist and bigot, that is absolutely unacceptable because you shouldn't be allowed to call your political opponent a hate-mongering racist and bigot, especially if you're a hate-mongering racist and bigot. Democrats believe that this country is an unfair, warmongering stink heap of brutal racism, sexism, and homophobia. And when Donald Trump says this country is in trouble, it's disgusting because this is a wonderful country where everything is going great. Democrats believe that black people are oppressed, impoverished, and endangered by violence. And when Donald Trump says black people are oppressed, impoverished, and endangered by violence, that's awful because black folks couldn't be happier. Democrats believe that Donald Trump is a terrible man for attacking a great war hero like John McCain. That's their job. Democrats believe that we have to continue the policies of Barack Obama because they have improved our country so much, and that's why we have to elect a Democrat to correct the income inequality, low employment, and Middle Eastern violence that have become so much worse over the last 8 years. Democrats believe that words matter, and therefore you shouldn't say them. Democrats believe that ideas matter, and therefore they should be able to tell you which ones to have. Democrats believe that the Muslims' religion is just as good as the religions of the people they kill. To say otherwise would be to suggest that ideas matter, which you shouldn't go around saying because ideas matter. Democrats believe that Republicans should stop all this complaining about media bias because it makes it hard for them to hear all the great things the media are saying about them. But most of all, Democrats believe that only government can create the sort of programs that can make our problems so bad that only government can create the sort of programs that can make our problems so bad that only government can create the sort of problems that make our problems so bad that only government can solve them. Also, everything's melting and police are killing all the black people, so run for your life and vote for Democrats because things are going so well. I hope this has been helpful in bringing our two sides together. Trigger warning, I'm Andrew Klavan, and this is The Andrew Klavan Show. Someone pointed out on Twitter yesterday that maybe it wasn't fair of me to put the trigger warning at the end. Yeah. All right, we're careening wildly into the long Labor Day Klavanless weekend. I can barely watch what's going to happen. You can stave off the effects of the Klavanless weekend if only you will order my book, my memoir, The Great Good Thing. Right, it's a simple solution. The Great Good Thing, a secular Jew comes to faith in Christ. And if you're interested in getting a little preview of it, you can go on Christianity Today on their website. They have a short piece that I wrote that's kind of a little preview of the book. So that would give you a sense of it. And then you can spring for the book, which you ought to do anyway. All right, we've got 15 minutes together here on Facebook and YouTube live, and then come over to the Daily Wire to watch the rest of the show, or you can download us later on iTunes or SoundCloud. But the important thing is that you subscribe because you already missed last week's mailbag, and now another mailbag is in the offing, and you want to be in it. You have to be part of the show. So before we get to the main news, I just noticed that scientists probing a newly exposed, formerly snow-covered outcropping in Greenland claim that they have discovered the oldest fossils ever seen, remnants of life 3.7 billion years old. And they can include emails from Hillary Clinton. That's amazing. Let's just bring that up. All right. I couldn't help that. I just saw that. I thought, well, I bet there's some more of those in there. All right. So Trump in Mexico. This is actually a big story. I think this is, there is a poll today from Fox that has Trump and Hillary 2 points ahead, has Hillary only 2 points ahead of Trump. That means that the gap has really narrowed a lot. It was 10 points earlier in the month. And I think the stuff that happened yesterday is going to change a lot of stuff. It's really going to be I think it's a game saver. I think it's like a game saver, game changer. And I think, let's take a look at what happened. Trump goes down and answers an invitation to meet the Mexican president, Enrique Peña Nieto. Okay, and they had a negotiation, and it got a little tense.
Oiga, señor, we are federales, the mountain police.
If you're the police, where are your badges?
Badges? We ain't got no badges. We don't need no badges. I don't have to show you any stinking badges.
Better not come any closer.
No sea tonto, hombre. We didn't try to do you any harm. Why don't you try to be a little more polite? Give us your gun, and we'll leave you in peace.
I need my gun myself.
Oh, throw that old light on over here. We'll pick it up and go on our way.
You go anyway without my gun and go quick.
So, okay, maybe that wasn't the most presidential moment, but at least he stood up for our Second Amendment rights, right? And then later he came out in a press conference with Nieto, and he made conciliatory remarks about Mexican Americans.
Mexican Americans don't like to just get into gang fights. They like flowers and music and white girls named Debbie too. Mexican Americans are named Chata and Chela and Chema and have a son-in-law named Jeff. Mexican Americans don't like to get up early in the morning, but they have to, so they do it real slow. Mexican Americans love education, so they go to night school and they take Spanish and get a B. Yeah, leave that in. Mexican Americans love their nanas and their nonos and their ninas and their ninos. Nanu, nanu, nina, no, no. Mexican Americans don't like to go to the movies where the dude has to wear contact lenses to make his blue eyes brown, 'cause don't it make my brown eyes blue? And that's all I got.
I think that made up for a lot of the mean things he said about the rapists and all that stuff. As far as I'm concerned, we can end the show right here, but I suppose we should go on and talk about what really happened. And I really do believe that this is going to have a big effect on the polls if the Valium doesn't wear off and Trump blows his foot off with a cannon or something like this. But just yesterday, he really looked great. He goes down there and he meets with the president at the Mexican president's request. And then he comes out and he gives one of these joint press conferences. And for those of you who are supporters of Hillary Clinton, a press conference is where a candidate stands in front of the press and answers questions. So it's a little different on our side than on yours. But he gets out and he gives a press conference. And he was actually really, first of all, he was very restrained. He really did look like he was on Valium. He looked like he was just, dead. But he stood up for his thing about the wall. He stuck to his guns about the wall. So we have that.
Having a secure border is a sovereign right and mutually beneficial. We recognize and respect the right of either country to build a physical barrier or wall on any of its borders to stop the illegal movement of people, drugs, and weapons. Cooperation toward achieving this shared objective, and it will be shared, of safety for all citizens is paramount to both the United States and to Mexico.
So, he was a little bit conciliatory about NAFTA, the trade agreement. He's said again, this is a disaster and Mexico is stealing all our jobs, which is kind of ridiculous on the face of it because it would mean that we want to be more like Mexico. And then we'd all have to sneak into their country, which so it doesn't really make any sense. But he said openly and in front of the president, Nieto, he said that he felt that NAFTA had been better for Mexico than for the U.S. And Nieto said, look, there's room to modernize it, I think was the word he used. So, he was just very, I hate to use the word, but he was very presidential. He was the one who called on the questions from the press, which is actually not the way it usually works. Usually the guy from his home country, it's his home court, he calls on the reporters. But Trump was just in charge. He looked like everything his supporters say he is. And, I've been very honest about my, feelings about Trump. I have real problems with him, but I'm just telling it the way I saw it. It looked to me looking at that, I mean, look at this picture of him shaking hands. We have a picture of him shaking hands with the president, right? There's two guys who look like they're just on equal footing, right? That's the way an American president should look. He's not looking down on him. He's not bullying him. He's just shaking hands with him. Compare that to Hillary Clinton when she bow, the famous Obama bow, because Obama is even worse. I mean, Obama does everything but press his forehead to the ground like he's in a mosque. So, I mean, it is refreshing. I'm sorry, but it is refreshing to see somebody acting like a leader of a country and not like that we have to go and apologize to people for supporting most of the free nations of the world. And, of course, we know that he did well because the left-wing press went nuts. I'll get back to the New York Times. The New York Times went insane. They went out of their minds. But all of them, they tried to lead with the fact Trump came out and said, we didn't discuss who would pay for the wall. That's a big Trump thing, right? Mexico's going to pay for the wall. And then Nieto came out and said, well, the first thing out of my mouth when we sat down to talk was that there's no way we're paying for this wall. And they said, oh, there's a big conflict. One person said it was one way, but all Trump said was they didn't discuss it, and he didn't respond. I mean, even the Mexican spokesman said, no, we didn't discuss it. He didn't respond. So that was just a comment that Nieto made. So it really, the whole thing went off well. Hillary attacked him before he even left, I think, before he even got back from the meeting. She was at the American Legion, where she gave a speech that was so irritating in its pro-American, tone, when all she has ever done her whole career is diss the country. Anyway, then she said this about Trump.
You don't build a coalition by insulting our friends or acting like a loose cannon. You do it by putting in the slow, hard work of building relationships. Getting countries working together was my job every day as your Secretary of State. It's more than a photo op. It takes consistency and reliability. Actually, it's just like building personal relationships. People have to get to know that they can count on you, that you won't say one thing one day and something totally different the next. And it certainly takes more than trying to make up for a year of insults and insinuations by dropping in on our neighbors for a few hours and then flying home again. That is not how it works.
So we have the spectacle of Hillary Clinton talking about trust, that, she's not going to say one thing, one day and something different the next. She's going to stick to her lies right down the road. She'll never change. And secondly, she looks like death. I mean, she looks like she didn't even wash her hair. I got the feeling like, I got to go to the American Legion. I'm not feeling very well, but I got to get out. She looked like she didn't wash her hair. And, every time you comment on her appearance, people say it's sexist, as if I've never made jokes about the fact that Donald Trump looks like a walking cheese puff. I mean, I think it's perfectly fair. The woman looks terrible. Somebody said she looks like a Bond villain, but she may look like a Bond villain, but it's Donald Pleasance. I mean, it's not a good look. All right, so then Trump goes to Phoenix, and then he makes his speech that he has been putting off, where he's going to outline his immigration proposal. Is he going to soften it? Is he going to harden it? What's he going to do? And the New York Times writes a lead. This is the lead they write. It looks like, it looks like it was written before the speech was given. They had to change it later. It started out, Donald J. Trump made an audacious attempt on Wednesday to remake his image on the divisive issue of immigration, shelving his plan to deport 11 million undocumented people and suggesting that the United States and Mexico would solve the immigration crisis together. Well, Twitter went nuts, okay? It does, that's not what people saw. It reminded me when I was a reporter, there was I think it was a July 4th picnic, and the reporter decided what's going to happen at a July 4th picnic. The county supervisor is going to get up and give us a patriotic speech. So he didn't go, and he filed the story anyway, and the supervisor got up and had a heart attack. And so the paper ran a story saying, here was the speech by the county supervisor, the July 4th speech, but the true story was the speech by the county supervisor was whoosh, boom, that was it. And so he didn't attend. This was what this was like. It was like they filed it. So it doesn't matter. The point is, it doesn't matter. They rewrote the story then to say that, well, Donald Trump did try to sound hardline, but he wasn't going to do anything more hardline than Barack Obama has done. Barack Obama has, according to the New York Times, has been tremendously hardline and effective on immigration. none of this matters because people see, it's a new world. Nobody cares what's in the New York Times. People see what they see and they hear what they hear. The New York Times is basically now a lullaby for people who like to fall asleep to the sound of their own opinion spoken as if it were news. That's like what the New York Times is, and it's fish wrap. Hey, we got to say goodbye to Facebook, but we got a lot more to talk about. Come over to the Daily Wire.